she has 6 toes, so who the fuck knows? Maybe she does have an Adam's apple for some reason, who knows? I love all that weird shit. I get a huge kick out of it. Some other ones are, there's the Grimaud Tarot in 1970, and if you're looking to do for forms and everything, somebody might mention, like, hey, did you notice in the line for the Grimaud Tarot, there's a bunny hidden? And so when I looked at this, I looked at mine's not Grimaud, and I was looking at this, I was like, I don't see a bunny. Then I found a picture online of the Grimaud Tarot, and right here, there's a little bunny hidden in the lion. Right, same. So you might say, okay, well, maybe it just looks like a bunny, but it's not supposed to. But again, 6 toes, So it is easy for me to believe he intentionally hit a bunny in there. Why? Maybe he likes bunnies. Maybe it has some kind of meaning or something. Who knows? But I love all that stuff. Another weird one is that in the RWS and in the Marseille Tarot, the moon, there's like a lobster or a crawdad or something like coming out of the water. So I could see like, there are 2 lions like or wolves or whatever howling at the moon or whatever. But why, like out of all the animals, why is there a lobster coming? Like a lobster? It just seems like such a weird choice, but it's typical. In all of these different decks, often for the moon, they'll have like 2 land animals here and then like a lobster coming up. And then you read why if you're like, oh, this symbolizes the unconscious or something like, it's very strange. And you also note, and there'll just be a bunch of things when you get really into this, you start and it's like, oh shit, this one has these weird little tick marks next to it. And then you'll read and people like count and there are 10 of these and there are 13, so 10, okay, that's, 10 is the Wheel of Fortune, so maybe that means that this card has to do with a fate for something, blah blah. So people just go deep into these little minuscule little details. And again, you're tempted to think that's all bullshit, but since they're all interested in this, including the people who make the cards, it all feeds on itself and all these weird little details they're all hidden in there. Another weird one is the Golden Dawn deck. I mentioned that the actual people who are in this one, these people who think they have magic spells in this book or whatever, that deck came with 2 temperances. The temperance, which is 14, came with 2 of them, and it's in accordance with the requirements of the portal ritual of the Golden Dawn. And so, okay, before you do the divination, just for normal telling, just remove one of the temperances. But they give you 2 temperances in case you're going to do the portal ritual, because that needs 2 temperances. I don't know. I love this shit. It's bizarre. This is a little bit of a digression. I thought it was interesting, but one piece of symbology you see here is called the tetramorph. So in the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel, there's this weird LSD trip thing where Ezekiel sees some vision where he sees cherubim, and he's describing what cherubim looks like, and he says, they had the face of a man and the face of a lion on the right side, and they had the face of an ox on the left side, and they also had the face of an eagle. So that's a weird thing to say. And then later on in the book of Revelation, they mentioned, in this vision, the first piece was like a lion, the second was like a calf, the third had the face of a man, the fourth was like a flying eagle. So 2 different places in the Bible they mention these 4 animals. Then, so you might say, where the hell did that come from? Again, take all this with a grain of salt. It's me looking around on the internet. But somebody mentions that, claims that this originates in Babylonian symbols of the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. So Taurus, Leo, and then Scorpio and Aquarius. And you say, well, wait, Scorpio, there's an eagle, so why would Scorpio have to do with the eagle? Apparently, outside of the Middle East, nobody knew what a scorpion was, so it gets tweaked over to be an eagle. So the claim is that, and one reason why that sort of makes sense is because this happens during the Babylonian exile, Babylonian captivity of Israel, and there are other parts in the book of Ezekiel that seem really weird and don't make any sense. But if it has something to do with astrology, like saying signs are in the sky and things of this, then it makes a lot more sense. So again, take all of this with a grain of salt. But the idea is that this bit in the Bible has something to do with astrology, and it seems like the Golden Dawn people, when they in this book, they're super into astrology, they're super into tarot, and they are super. What's the third one? Into the Kabbalah. So those are the 3 things they're super into. So something that having to do with astrology is like catnip to these people. So Saint Irenaeus in the 2nd century AD wrote a book called Against Heresies, and for writing this book, he got to be a saint. So he's Saint Irenaeus. And one of the things that he did is, out of all these different writings that are floating around, people are trying to pull different ones and decide, okay, what goes in the Bible? And saying, okay, how many Gospels should we have? Because there are different versions of Gospels floating around. And he's like, well, guys, stop being stupid. Clearly, it should be 4 Gospels. And the reason is, obviously, there are 4 zones of the world, and there are 4 principal winds. And then, and so he makes arguments like that, and he says, and then also in Ezekiel, he says, when he talks about, the first creature was like a lion. The second one was like a calf. The third was had the face of a man, and the fourth was like an eagle. Like, so there are 4 things there. So clearly there should be 4 gospels. So this is the argument he makes for why there should be 4 gospels. We're not going to pick 5 of them. They're going to pick 4, and that's clearly what God intends. So for this, he becomes a saint, and this is one of the places where the Bible comes from. But my point here is just that because of this little bit here, each of those 4 animals is associated with the 4 evangelists in the 4 Gospels. And this isn't like an obscure thing. This is all over the place in old Christian artwork. When I was a sophomore in college and I was looking at different churches in Europe, I was with a friend, and we were looking at some piece of artwork in a church, and I was like, why is there like a cow, and then like an angel, okay, but then like a lion? And my friend was like, oh, that's like some Catholic Christian thing or whatever, where each of those has to do with one of the evangelists for some reason. It's like, so that was like, he's a cow for some reason? I'm like, all right. So you see this all over the place. So for example, in the Aachen Gospels, very old gospel, you can see these are written in there. This is a picture of a lion for somebody who's never seen a lion. And in Chartres Cathedral, here we are, there's an angel, there's an eagle, there's a bull with wings, and so this is a human with wings, so I guess, it's an angel. Eagles already have wings, so it's not like he gets 4 wings, but here's a bull with wings, and then here's a lion with wings. Again, it's a lion for somebody who's never seen a lion before. So this is, Chartres Cathedral, built in the 12th century, so this isn't like some obscure thing, it's all over the place when you go to different churches. Amusingly, the correspondence of which of these animals corresponds to which of the evangelists is inconsistent. Like, if you go to the Wikipedia page, it has like 10 different versions where, usually this one's John, but then in these ones it's Paul, it's Luke or whatever. I think today there's an official one that they've decided they like, but there are a bunch of different versions of these going back. Because again, Irenaeus didn't give the correspondence, he was just interested in the number 4. So anyway, that is the tetramorph. In the RWS cards, you see these in a couple places. On this one, there's a person, eagle, lion, bull. You might think maybe it has something to do with Christian symbology, but a lot of it is really astrology. These people love astrology. So anyway, I get a kick out of the fact that in the Chartres Cathedral, there's this weird Christian thing that had, again, probably had something to do with Babylonian astrology. And then in the tarot cards, for these people, they're super into astrology, and so then they also have the tetramorph there. They also love the idea, I think, of the Bible is vaguely, has spooky stuff in it, especially these LSD trip things from, Ezekiel and Revelations and things like that. So for example, in this Wheel of Fortune card, there's a sphinx, there's the tetramorph here as well though. There's like a snake over here. There are these weird, like, alchemical or whatever symbols, or maybe these are astrology symbols, I don't know. But anyway, so that's the tetramorph. It shows up on churches and stuff, and then it shows up in these tarot cards as well. Another weird one is that, so here's the RWS High Priestess card, and there are 2 columns here, and I say J and B here just to get your mind out of the gutter. But when you see these on the card, it's like, why does that say B and why does that say J? It's not here in this one. Again, it's not a regulated industry. It's not like you'll get in trouble if you don't have these columns labeled J and B. But it's typical. In a lot of different versions of the tarot for the High Priestess, they'll kind of follow RWS, and there'll be columns here with B and J. So why is that? It goes to 2 Chronicles that talk about Solomon building the temple. And it says the one to the south he named Jachin, and the one to the north, Boaz, or Jachin. And it's not really described what does that mean. Why would he what does that mean he named them? What does that mean? Nobody, who knows? But Freemasons, again, this shit is like catnip to these people. These are used as symbols in Freemasonry, and sometimes they're used in religious architecture. So anyway, just weird shit. It's having to do with Solomon's temple or whatever. This one's called Boaz and Jachin. And then finally, this one may seem like a stretch, but it's not. If you look, for example, on the Ten of Pentacles, as I mentioned, it ends up being a little bit like a Where's Waldo thing, where you try to find, if it's the Three of Swords, you try to find 3 swords or whatever. So for the Ten of Pentacles in RWS, here are 10 pentacles. The little things, maybe they're coins or whatever, but the little circles. So obviously you can find them here, but this isn't just a random arrangement or something that you pick. It corresponds with Kabbalah. This shape called the Tree of Life, where there are these 10 different things. These are called Sephiroth. Yes, like from Final Fantasy VII. The Final Fantasies, in a lot of anime and Final Fantasy VII, they love, finding these vaguely religious terms or whatever. So these are called Sephiroth from the Kabbalah. And this shape, with these 10 different islands or whatever, these 10 Sephiroth in this shape is called the Tree of Life. And so it corresponds with it. So again, it's funny to me that they're selling these cards, and this is hidden with these religious esoteric symbols hidden in there. Again, you might think like, oh, that's a bit of a stretch, anybody could make that shape or whatever. It's not. A lot of people take this stuff super seriously. And in particular, in that book, I can pull it out. No, it's in there. I'll show you later. But in that book, in the beginning of this book, when they're talking, the Golden Dawn people are talking about it. They start by talking about Kabbalah. It's a big deal, and they talk about what each of these things are, and it's all very weird. And then they have a figure in here where they label it with like, okay, aces are this one, and then threes too. So again, they love I think one of the reasons why they fell in love with the tarot, because it had already existed for a few hundred years. There are 22 major arcana, and then obviously you can there the 10 or whatever. If you count these paths going between the different Sephiroth, there are 22 paths. And again, there are 10 of these. So if you're looking at the tarot cards, ace through 10, and then there are 22 major arcana, you can make it fit. So you can see how they would come up with some myth of it's really old, and then it's there's this ancient esoteric knowledge encoded in the deck or whatever. So again, the Golden Dawn, they have this figure where the major arcana, they pick, they've labeled each of these. So this one's the magician, this one's the fool, this one's the high priestess, and so on. So it's not a coincidence that Smith, this Tree of Life, like the Golden Dawn is very into Kabbalah. So it's not a coincidence that the Tree of Life there is on the 10 of Pentacles. But again, she doesn't label this the Tree of Life. It's just kind of in there. So I love all this weird esoteric symbology that's just kind of hidden in there. This again is for the Zodiac. For whatever reason, I don't know why, I get a big kick out of tarot and all this esoteric symbology. And for whatever reason, I find it really interesting and fun. I can't feel the same way about astrology. Whenever I see astrology, I just throw up in my mouth a little bit. Neither of them make any sense. For some reason, the tarot version that doesn't make any sense is really interesting and fun to me, and the astrology version that doesn't make any sense just seems stupid to me. But at any rate, the Golden Dawn people don't feel that way. They love tarot, Kabbalah, and astrology. And so you can see here, they've cut up the zodiac. Here are the different, 12, I guess, 12 different zodiac signs. And then they split this out, and then here's Wands, Cups, Swords, Pentacles, Wands, Cups, Swords, Pentacles. So they split it all out. It has to be 2 through 10 instead of ace through 10. They kind of bend things to make it all fit, but still. So yeah, they've come up with correspondences for Kabbalah, tarot, and astrology, where all this stuff is some kind of weird system. Again, some people take this up super seriously. If you go to WikiHow, like different ways to cleanse a tarot deck, it's hilarious. So one thing they mention is like knocking. Energy can sometimes get stuck inside a tarot deck. I don't know if you guys noticed that about the deck in there, but sometimes energy can get stuck in it. Luckily, this is an easy fix. Simply knock or tap on the stacked deck 3 times while visualizing the trapped energy moving away from the deck. If you knock on it without visualizing the energy leaving, clearly it won't work. So be sure to visualize when you knock on the deck, and that makes the energy leave. Another way to do it is a salt bath. Salt naturally pulls energy away from objects, including tarot cards. I don't know if you guys knew that, but that's apparently true. Blah, 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 blah. This one is the one that killed me. Opt for a natural salt like sea salt or Himalayan salt rather than table salt for the best results. So for the best results implies one of two things as near as I can tell. Either somebody tested it somehow, like the readings are more accurate when you use Himalayan salt rather than table salt, or nobody ever tested it, and they just are claiming you get best results if you use Himalayan, because of course you'll get better results with Himalayan salt rather than table salt. Either way, it's ridiculous. So anyway, this stuff cracks me up, but whoever does this stuff, it's not a joke to they take it very seriously. And then of course on Reddit, if you go our tarot, here's thoughts on 7 of Wands plus 8 of Swords together for a love reading. 5 of Swords as help. So there are people who take this very seriously on Reddit, of course. Etsy is the epicenter of American occultism. So as near as I can tell, like 3 organizations where tarot is important are Romani, or we used to call Gypsies. I think Gypsy is an Eversay. So the Romani, the Golden Dawn. I talked a little bit about them in the 19th century Society of Magicians, and they exist a little tiny bit today, and of course America. A small number of them. It seems a little bit like Freemasonry, where it used to be bigger and then it's kind of died down. But the third thing is Wicca, and I think tarot is thriving in Wicca, and Wicca is thriving as a belief system, or maybe quasi-religion, or some people it's a very serious religion. But anyway, Wicca is thriving, and if you want to buy Wicca shit, Etsy is the place to go. One of the things I like about it is that it feels like an anarchic quasi-religion where no one is in charge. To me, it feels a little bit like Christianity in 100 AD, where nothing's written down, and all these weird different versions of it, like Docetism. There's adoptionism, which is this idea that Jesus was adopted. He wasn't actually, the Son of God. He was adopted as the Son of God. I think Docetism is the idea that Jesus was incorporeal and you couldn't touch Jesus. He was just like a ghost that you couldn't touch. So all these weird heresies floating around. And then again, we saw Irenaeus wrote this book against heresies, and things were kind of firmed up in the 2nd century. But to me, tarot feels a little bit like this, where it's this weird quasi-religion, but nobody's in charge. So there's all these weird little anarchic offshoots going on. And again, Etsy is a place where you can kind of get a sense of all this stuff. This I thought was interesting just because we've talked about AI-generated artwork. I saw this and it seemed a little weird. Like, what are these little veins coming out? Like, there's not 3 swords, it's just 1 sword. Like, is that a sword? And I was like, this looks a little AI-generated. So I emailed the guy that I bought this from and said, hey, is this AI-generated? I wasn't mad or anything. He said, hi there, thanks for reaching out. I used AI as a skeleton for designs and then import all that into Photoshop and then Procreate, I don't know what that means, to make it my own. Combining it with old designs of mine, redrawing and adding a bunch of elements. Adding a bunch of elements to fit my aesthetic, as AI cannot create a style that maintains itself throughout the entire deck. And of course, add humanity to it. Hopes this helps. So I thought it was just interesting as a process. You see somebody who starts with AI and then tweaks it. But then B, I don't think it's quite there. To me, this is not as interesting. Maybe eventually there'll be AI artwork that I really like, but to me it just seems a little, if he had made this, then I think, oh, that's weird. That's an interesting decision to have these little veins going out. Gabriel and I have talked about this a lot, and I think Richard and I too, about how different people react to AI artwork. For me, when I find out it's AI generated, I'm a little less interested, but not everybody feels that way. Blah, blah, blah. So I should mention also at the end of this, when I'm talking about how fun tarot is and everything, I should mention this saying from Carl Sagan, where he mentions in his book, The Demon Haunted World. He says, I have a foreboding when no one in the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially kind of a celebration of ignorance. So I think it's fair to look at this as a kind of celebration of ignorance. So I should mention, this isn't just a positive thing, and I want to mention, for example, homeopathy, which is, the same sort of stuff or whatever. At one point I had an ear infection, and my wife at the time, Dana, was kind and, got me some medicine for my ear infection, and I looked and said homeopathic. And I knew that means like water, not medicine. And it killed me because the one thing you're supposed to do if you have an ear infection is don't pour water in your ear. We want to dry it out. Getting it wet makes things worse. So people are selling things that says medicine, but it's just water. People are taking money for somebody trying to get medicine for their sick kid and selling water. I think if CVS sells that, they should, people should go to prison. There should be criminal fines. You shouldn't be able to sell medicine, sell water labeled as medicine and take money from, some single mom who waits tables for a living, doesn't have extra money, but buys medicine for a kid, and you're selling her water. Anyway, so it's not all fun and games. Steve Jobs is another example. When he was first diagnosed, rather than going to a physician or whatever, he did some kind of new naturopathy, new age medicine or whatever. It would have been easily curable if he had gotten real, medicine, treatment when he was first became sick, but he didn't, and he didn't start getting actual treatment from actual medicine until things were much farther along, and obviously he died, and we're all worse off for it, and especially his friends and family. That being said, there are also versions of this type of thing that I think is not so insidious. So one version of the tarot that I have in here is called the Darkwood Tarot. And if you, for example, go through the book and it talks about what the different meanings are when they talk about the Two of Swords. So, meaning, taking time to discover how you really feel, think, and respond to external circumstances, choosing words carefully, the ability to recognize old habits and patterns. And then if it's reversed, the shadow meaning, so is the way that they describe it all, is it better to face the issue at hand than to retreat inward, especially if you have a tendency to isolate yourself. Avoid martyring yourself. It helps no one, least of all you. Allow and accept help when offered. So to me, this all seems kind of reasonable. And the way that they put it, the way that they put it is not like the magic spirits are telling you what to do. They don't even really claim that there's any necessarily, spooky stuff going on. The way that they talk about it has to do with like intuition or whatever. And even if it did have some kind of quasi, mystical, flavor to it, and they kind of dance around it. To me, it's an idea of having ritualistic daily meditation and an examined life. So I can imagine a young woman who's interested in stuff, doing a little tarot reading for herself every day and thinking of things this way, critically about parts of her own life. To me, that seems pretty positive. So I don't think it's necessarily true that people who take this into their own life in some way and use it. I think there are versions of this that are not so insidious. Again, you can decide on your own, but in particular, this version with the Darkwood Tarot, I thought it was interesting, and there's a version of this kind of stuff that doesn't seem so insidious and terrible to me. I think that's about it. Does anybody have any questions?
15 minutes exact.
It was?
I don't remember. I don't want to go back to that. It was probably a dumb question.
Did you say something like look weird on one of the cards?
Well, like I had
The
like,
rabbit in the
the one where you had the queen or whatever
Uh-huh.
with the toes.
Yeah.
That middle one, was that like the original?
Well, nobody knows because it first arose in the 15th century, but the oldest deck that we have is like 17th century or something
Yeah,
like
go back.
that.
We passed.
Because
Right there.
I feel like I counted.
Yeah, so this is
Go
newer.
back
If
one.
you look at the really
so back one.
so these are
No.
Forward.
Were the two or the six?
This is
that
the one
together.
with the
Next
six
one.
toes.
Next
Next
one.
One more. It was
That
that
one.
Yeah, this was 1970.
So that one has a rabbit in it.
Yeah, this one has
Because
a rabbit.
I think
And
I
this is
count.
this is the 1970 version has the rabbit. The one that is close to the original, like the oldest ones that we have don't have a rabbit in it. This guy Grimaud in 1970, when his version of the Marseille Tarot, he added a rabbit. There are more toes here, and it's not even obvious this is a foot. Like I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
It's seven.
maybe
On
7
that.
toes.
See,
There's seven on that
I
one.
counted
It's
it
hard to
as
tell.
5 because I count the
It could be.
because
Maybe
like
you gave her
that's like
5
the
toes.
flip flopper. It's not a
Yeah,
flip
that
flop,
well, the bottom part is
but
a
the
flip-flop.
outside part
yeah, that's
is.
6 toes.
It's hard to tell. Yeah,
I'd
I'm not
say
quite sure.
it's even
You
5.
can see where it's circling the bottom like a shoe.
Yeah.
But you can see it's easy to get really into this shit. Like, does he have 6 toes? Why did maybe?
She has 6
The
spikes on
lions
the
look
top of
like
her hat too.
Tasmanian devil.
This is weird. When you Google around about this stuff, often people are like, what the fuck is that? And then people can like find medieval hats that sort of look like that, and then other people are like, oh, it symbolizes this. People analyze this stuff to death, and I get a huge kick out of it because it's so weird.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Anyway,
The eyes are so weird.
so anyway, that's it. I'll take out some of the decks that I have there if anybody's interested in look at them. Like I said, I really enjoy them just as objects of art. It's a lot. It has a lot to do with board games. It's similar to me with board games. Now these tactile, works of art. When I get a new one, you got 78 pictures. Each of these, any one of these, is just a super cool picture. It must have taken her forever. I have 2 decks by this person. And she did this amazing job. The other deck that I have by her is actually my favorite deck, and it has no writing on it. So in order to, everything is like if you look at it, you have to know that's the Fool, that's the Moon, and obviously because of the picture you can kind of tell, but it's not even like labeled anywhere on there. The cardstock is really cool. So I love the artwork aspect of this. So anyway, I'll put the decks out there if anybody has any interest.
This is like I love it. I love Magic because of the artwork.
Yeah, I totally get it.
When did you first become interested in tarot?
So I bought a tarot deck sort of on a whim as an impulse buy. I don't know, maybe a year or 2 ago. It was when I lived in my current place. But then for some reason, a few months ago, I got more into it. I think I saw again on Etsy. I think I saw some ad and I saw something that looked cool, and then I got more and more down the rabbit hole. Until this point, I think I have 10 tarot decks, which is 10 more tarot decks than you need. But I'm super into it. As I mentioned, I have that AI deck, and I'm less interested in that one. And as I said, I have 10. That's actually the 11th deck. I have 10 decks. Do I need a deck that I don't really like? So that's actually up for grabs. If anyone's interested in an AI art tarot deck, I'm happy to give this as a there you go, as a nuke prize if anyone's interested in a tarot deck with, from AI generated
It
art.
was just the art that caught your eye when you bought
Part of it is that. Part of it is like my mom had a tarot deck when I was little, and I was going through my parents' shit, just looking in every drawer or whatever because I was bored. And I found the tarot deck and I looked through and I thought it was cool. And for a little while I had an idea of memorizing what the cards meant and learning to do readings, but it's a lot. As I said, there's 78 cards and there's an upright and reverse meaning for each of them. I have almost all that memorized. For the ace through 10, I only memorized the upright meaning because the reverse, you can kind of make something up or it's like close. But for all the other ones, I have the upright and reversed. At the time, I was A, worse at memorization, and then B, I didn't have, like at the time, I was like going to memorize like the whole little paragraph they have, which is not really necessary. Like right now, I just have like, one or 2 words memorized for each one, which is enough to come up with bullshit if you're going to do a reading for somebody. But anyway, so I was interested in that, and it's always stuck around in my mind as something that just seemed kind of cool and interesting. I don't know why it speaks to me, but just a few months ago, I became more interested in it again and decided I was going to go through and memorize it and just get this extra little skill. It's funny because on the one hand, it's a skill in that you've memorized it, and I'd like to get good at cold reading, though obviously I can't do it yet. But at some point, it's an achievable skill, and there's no right way to do it either. It's not like eventually start being accurate. But it's a fun little, quote unquote skill to have. So I get enjoyment out of it. At some point, I'd like to get good enough that I could give people readings and they'd get real enjoyment out of it.
Do you ever post or comment on the Tarot subreddit?
Nope.
No docs.
I do not know, because there are a lot of people that take it super seriously, and that's not where I am. I would be interested. I don't know. I would ask like the main stuff I get off of those type of subreddits where I get something helpful is where people say like, "What's your favorite deck? What decks have the coolest artwork?" That type of stuff I've looked at. The rest of it is like the meanings of the cards. I sort of don't care. I'm like the ones that I memorized. I used these people's meanings in their book for the minor arcana. Again, it's why major arcana and minor arcana? What the fuck does that mean? Anyway, for the minor arcana, I use these people's notes just for the upright ones because it's like the official one, and supposedly, that's where RWS got theirs. But anyways, where was I going with that? I don't remember. But anyway. But yeah, as far as posting on the subreddit, I wouldn't fuss in there. Most of the stuff in there, it seems a little navel gazing that I don't take it super seriously. It's sort of interesting from a psychological perspective in that some people, it is kind of a religious sense for some people. So it's interesting to get kind of a religious sensibility from people who aren't a part of like an Abrahamic religion. And again, it's a little anarchic too, because it's not like. For a lot of organized religions, it's organized, and there's one interpretation, whereas for this, it's kind of, Wicca is like different for every single person, and most of these people seem to be more like Wicca-ish. And so having people talk about these sort of pseudo-religious sensibilities, but where no one's in charge and there's not one canonical understanding of it all, is kind of interesting.
So is there not a lot of consensus between cards and their meaning?
The closest one is the RWS deck. That's what the RWS deck is. And that the original RWS deck, there were meanings about what those were, and then there's an earlier one, I think in 19th century that was popular, but RWS is the one that's really stuck around. So those early ones, had to do with meanings to do with the cards, and then the other ones are use that as the foundation. You can publish a deck and then have a little book that comes with it with totally different meanings, and nothing wrong with that. But people will kind of shy away from it because it feels like it's different than RWS, and so it's different than what if somebody's memorized the RWS-ish ones, then okay, that's what I've memorized. Why would I want a deck that has something different? And then B, it feels a little like made up, even though it's all made up. I like the made up version that's the same as the kind of normal one, so to speak. Supposedly, I think there is a difference between if you're doing a Marseille reading or an RWS reading. I think there are little subtleties. I think they're like particular cards where things are different that people would make a distinction between them. I looked a little bit more. I saw that somewhere and then I tried to find it and couldn't quite find it. Also, people will get good at particular decks, and I think they will look at the pictures. As I mentioned, a lot of people use the pictures as like an aid memoir to remember what each of the different cards do. So when you get a different deck, people will have like a favorite deck, and they'll do readings based on what that card says. The way that I personally like to do it is not to use the picture as an aid memoir. I kind of like just memorizing it. So like in the shower this morning, I was running through them all, and it had nothing to do with the pictures. It was just trying to remember, when I made myself flashcards on 3x5 note cards where I would just write it down. So that's the version that I kind of like. But a lot of people will tailor the meaning of the card to the little picture that the artist put on the card. And obviously, there's no wrong way.
When you were trying to remember up there the cards, were you going through your list?
Yeah, and because some of them, they're little runs. Like the one that I got stuck on was, I think, the 5 of cups, and for that one, there's like 4 is blended pleasure, whatever the fuck that means. 5 is loss in pleasure, and then 6 is pleasure. So that's kind of a run. And so 5, I was like, what was that one? And then I had to, 4 is blended pleasure. Oh yeah, and then I could remember the other 3. So some of them there's a run. Some of them are just easy. Like 9 of Swords is despair and cruelty. And then 10 of Swords is ruin. So the ones like that are kind of, for whatever reason, they stick in my mind. Again, I love this shit. Like, why would you make like despair and you look at it and it's like swords, he's stabbing some skull and all this crazy shit.
I was going to say, like, if there were a lot of consensus that the 10 of Swords is, what do you say?
Is oppression. 10 of Swords is oppression. 9 of Swords is despair and cruelty.
Yeah, so if everybody said that, then you could just make a card with that written on it.
Sorry.
You could just make a card with that written on it.
Yeah, that's what many people do, especially for learning decks. They have that kind of stuff. One of the early ones in the 19th century.
It doesn't seem magical enough.
No,
exactly. That's exactly like the one that I like has no writing on. I could show you that one, but the one that I like has no writing on. Like like the devil or whatever. It's like I think it's I forget what it is. But for example, the magician, it's a picture of a fox, and you know, and then the meaning of magician is resourcefulness, or return is like a trickster. So you can see how a fox would work with that. And again, it's kind of Wicca centric. When I got the deck, like she has a little note in there or whatever, and she says "Blessed be." It's like a Wicca thing, and so all of those are very nature centered. But again, these I don't know if you can see this art, but it's fucking incredible. Like the one that Lisa was kind of taking a closer look at there, the 9 of Cups, like this octopus holding these 9 cups, and again the cups are white, like the pentacles all are, you know, are very stark white. There's some other, you know, cups over there, but it's always this you know, white one. So to have the octopus holding these, I don't know, this is just such a gorgeous picture. It's so cool. Yeah, that's the main thing. That's the reason why I keep getting more decks, is I see stuff like that and I'm like, that's so fucking cool. These pictures are so, and there's 78 of them. Like, she didn't phone in a single one of them. Any one of these could be a poster.
That's the like worst thing. It's hard to share unless you're giving readings to people. How do you actually get to enjoy this art besides just flipping through the deck?
That's one reason why I think readings, again, like doing little readings for stuff, you look at it all and it's fun. I get a huge kick out of it. But yeah, I'll put some decks over there and you can look at all if you like.
I think it's cool, like the game part of it. Like you said, there are different configurations.
Yeah.
Do you get good at a configuration?
I think so. Yeah. I picked the Celtic Cross just because I'd seen it a few different places. So in my brain, that feels the most official, whatever that means. And again, it's spooky. What does that mean? Why Celtic? Well, you know, this might just be a bunch of bullshit that you know, that Waite came up with. Like, there's a lot of, it's all bullshit, but it's different levels. Like, it's either bullshit. When was the bullshit made up? If it was made up recently, then that's less legitimate than if it was made up 100 years ago.
So, when it comes to people who, like you said, take it really seriously, like, are a lot of these people who, like, I mean, I guess there are people who believe in all the, like, the meanings of these cards and stuff like that. Are these typically, like, people who believe in it? Are they people who are, like, going out and receiving readings, or is it also the people giving readings?
I think it could be both.
A lot of what you talked about was, like, how you sort of game it, or like use psychology and like tricks and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but someone doing that doesn't seem like that they're believing in what their cards say.
I think absolutely it's both. If you go into, so there are people who don't believe in it, and there are probably people like con artists who give readings and know it's all bullshit, but you can make a living if you have people who believe that you're doing this. I assume there are people who are like that. There are people who don't believe in it and things, but they give readings because it's fun. If they're going to be ethical about it, they're not like charging people for that. Or if you charge people, it's for, like when I went to the Renaissance Festival recently, I got a reading. I bought my daughter a reading, and we were a little disappointed. But at any rate, I didn't feel. I assume the lady giving the reading didn't. Well, she might have actually. She described herself as intuitive. I don't know. Maybe she believed it. But hypothetically, she didn't believe it. She charges $40. I don't think she was ripping us off. Like, we're at the Renaissance Festival, we're getting a little spooky reading, a little tent.
It feels more like theater.
Part of the show.
Yeah.
But it's
$40
easy
is
to
a lot, it's
imagine
fun.
someone who's like a cult adjacent or likes that aesthetic, wanting to start their own business, and like, oh, I could open a candle shop or make soaps, or oh, I could do tarot readings. That seems like it's fun and it's kind of in line with your thoughts, but it's not. You don't believe wholeheartedly that like the Lord is driving you to put cards down.
It's like how many people believe in astrology, and Gemini.
Yeah.
You hear all about that.
Yeah.
But do they really, like, would they die if you said, do you believe in this or not? Nope, I don't.
Yeah.
But you never know.
But you're also taking part in something that has a history.
Yeah.
So it's like
It's funny.
it's big.
It's
You
a
know?
subculture.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think is so interesting. Is like, why is the fact that it's a couple hundred years old make it more interesting to me? It does, but why would that matter?
Well, because then the other option is this person's just literally making up everything they're saying right in front of
Why
you.
would it
Which
matter if it were, if they're
I don't
making it
know.
in front of you,
The has been vetted over
Yeah.
time, and it's still around, therefore
Right.
it's worth paying a little bit of attention
yeah,
to.
that means something.
Yeah.
What it means, who knows?
It wouldn't have lasted this long.
Do you think it's possible there are people who are giving readings that believe in like all the symbology and stuff, that are maybe using some of these techniques without necessarily realizing what they're doing? Like, if they see a meaning in the card they play, they might always ask, like, is there something like this in your life? And when the person says, like, no, they might, like, then why would I, like, they might be trying to pull at other things until they find it, and like, oh yeah, and that was what I was talking about. And they think that, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I could completely imagine that. I've heard. I don't know if this is true or not. one way that I've heard people interpret Donald Trump is that he's very good at these rallies and everything. One interpretation I've heard, and who knows, this is all mind reading, so who knows if it's true or not. One interpretation of it is, he's very good at these rallies and stuff. So one option is that this is a skill that he's consciously good at or whatever. But another option is he's just kind of intuitively good at having a crowd going. He just kind of knows how to do it. And so there are people who are good at hypnotism and this type of thing, who see techniques that he's using that can see, oh, he's really good at this. And so the question is he intentionally doing that, or is he just kind of intuitively good at reading a crowd and being good at this? And to me, it's plausible the second one is true. And in the same way, what you just described seems completely plausible to me, that somebody could be giving tarot readings and kind of key into what the person that they're talking to is doing, and that makes it seem a little more miraculous, even if they're maybe kind of unintentionally using some of these cold reading techniques. It could even be intentional. Like they could even feel like, oh, it feels like I should go that way, and this is what the spirits are telling me. This is what the spirits are telling me. When I could see that made them happy or whatever, the spirits are telling me that or I'm a psychic and therefore I can tell that I should go more down this direction. So
you could
that's
think
completely
you've
plausible.
trained your intuition.
Again,
you're
I think
just
that
collecting your own data set from your own
Mm-hmm.
clients, and so you might not realize you're doing statistics, but you were like, say, oh, this answer usually gets me a good response from people.
And that stuff is really interesting. There's something called chick sexing, which is not what it sounds like. When little baby chicks are born, they keep the females to lay eggs, and they kill the males by throwing them in a grinder. But then you have a problem of like, how do you tell which sex the little chick is? And when they teach people to do this, the way they do it apparently is really interesting. Is they have somebody who can already do it. The new person comes in and just watches them, and these seemingly identical looking chicks, they grab the females and toss the males or whatever. And then they have them start doing it, and the person who knows how to do it will just say right, wrong, right, wrong, right, right, wrong, wrong, wrong. And over time, they eventually can do right, 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 and they can't even articulate how they know. It's just that's a female, that looks like a female, that looks like a male, even though they can't even say, how do I know? Apparently, that's how you learn how to sex chicks. Is
And
that
it really works? Like they check it sometimes?
Well, you can tell because they grow up and lay eggs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, but there's also the opposite, right?
It's not that when they grow up, it's not 50-50. Like apparently it's a learnable skill to tell whether a baby chick is male or female. And I bet you could train an AI to do it, and it would be as good. But humans are probably doing the same sort of thing as the AI would do, but just people can't articulate why that looks like it. Like I was talking,
and they're tossing 50%.
That's why I don't eat eggs. Vegans, the ethical reasons, because where eggs come from is that they need female hens, and when you get the male ones, they throw them into a grinder and kill them.
But are they tossing 50% in the grinder?
Yep, the 50% that are male, they throw into a grinder.
Why would they throw a grinder? Why wouldn't they just?
Because they're not good to eat. For the chickens that you're going to eat are a different type of chicken. The ones that grow eggs are ideal for laying eggs are different than the ones that are ideal to eat.
Yo.
Is anybody interested in cutting this quits and playing Secret Hitler?
Yeah, we're done. We're just doing that.
I know, you guys are just shooting the shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about.
I had to leave. This chair was hurting my fucking back, and then I passed out for I think like 45 minutes.
Oh really?
Damn.
I think. I don't know.
I saw you so bad, so I cast a spell on you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Well, then supposedly Gabriel went and laid down too. I think we've both been sleeping.
Okay, good.
But does anybody want to play Secret Hitler?
Yeah, I'd be down.
Do we still have a group?
Yeah, I'd be down.
Okay. I will not be the fascist.
Put on pajamas.
Yeah. While y'all are getting ready, I'll put out some decks there. Oh, also, I mentioned the portal ritual of the Golden Dawn. Like,
I
that's
can
a
grab
real
game.
thing. If anyone's interested in a book written by people who think they know magic, with magic spells, like here's a book. It's super interesting. Is anyone interested in paging?
I'll take a look at it.
It is weird shit.
Isn't the Golden Dawn in Skyrim?
Good job.
Might be. I don't know. Thank you. If you're interested.
That was awesome.
That book was about cancer, so that would have been a pretty hard
Yeah.
pivot.
Like I said, I think of it as being like board game adjacent.
Yeah.